There is absolutely no doubt about the fact that I have loved OnePlus phones over the years, and I believe I have solid reasons for that. It's primarily the price versus the experience bit. A 35,000 rupee OnePlus phone, give or take a few, would give you largely the same experience as a 70,000 or an 80,000 rupee Android flagship phone. But things are now changing though. The latest OnePlus 7 Pro is actually a flagship phone in itself. But is it good enough to compete with the likes of the Samsung Galaxy S10 series, or the Huawei Mate 20 Pro and the P30 Pro for example, or even the Google Pixel lineup, which also now has a slightly more affordable version? Let's find out if this phone has all the ingredients it needs. The OnePlus 7 Pro has a completely refreshed design, and it looks nothing like the previous OnePlus phones. What we have here is the Nebula Blue color variant, and this is gorgeous to look at. Hard to say if this is just the reason, but the height of this phone is accentuated by the color perhaps. The slightly rounded spines merge well into the curved glass at the front, and all in all this snuggles well in the hand. However, you have to be very careful because this wants to escape from your hand too, because it's a little slippery at the back. There's Gorilla Glass 5 all around, so that's a little reassuring, well, sort of. Even though I have always been a fan of what I refer to as reassuring heft in a phone, the OnePlus 7 Pro just feels a tad heavier than initially imagined, and it takes some getting used to. Remember, this is another OnePlus phone that isn't water resistant. This also doesn't have wireless charging. One could perhaps argue that neither are very big deals, but I would argue the fact that these are essentials on what is now a flagship phone. Switch this phone on, and the large real estate pretty much gets it spot on in terms of the brightness, the viewing angles, the sharpness, and mostly the color reproduction as well. This screen is what OnePlus calls the Fluid AMOLED, and it really comes to life when you tweak the calibration settings as per your preference. There's a whole lot of excitement about the 90Hz refresh rate feature on the display of the OnePlus 7 Pro. It's been called all sorts of great things, like it's the most amazing display and all that. Fine, the performance is great, but do you really want to spend money on a 90Hz refresh rate feature right now? The point is, there are not enough apps or games that actually support this sort of a refresh rate. So what you're left with at the moment is a slightly more fluid interface as you swipe along, and slightly clearer videos as you watch something perhaps on Netflix or YouTube. But this is more of a future-proof feature rather than something that you will utilize right now. Performance is top-notch, safe to say. You will be able to buy the OnePlus 7 Pro in multiple states of tune, which means different amounts of RAM and storage. What we are testing here is the variant with 12 GB of RAM, the maximum that you will get, and this sits at the top of the ladder. This runs the Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 processor. One of the reasons for the super fast performance that you see is also the UFS 3.0 storage, which offers very fast data read and write speeds. The OnePlus 7 Pro has 3 cameras at the back. Quite expected though, because a lot of its Android flagship rivals do the same thing. But does a phone really need 3 cameras at the back? That's a question we don't really have a definitive answer for. All we can say is the Google Pixel phones still take fantastic photos with 1 camera. Do 3 here really matter? Let's see if the photos deliver on the performance we expect. However, the photography performance isn't always as expected. While you can wring out some really good photos from this camera, by and large, you will still not be able to ignore certain issues. The frames are a tad too soft for our liking, there's perhaps not enough sharpness in some photos, and the exposure isn't always right. Some low-light photos tend to exhibit a great amount of noise when you zoom in. This is at a time when the flagship Android phones such as the Samsung Galaxy S10 and the Huawei P30 Pro really have taken the camera game a couple of notches up. The biggest upgrade over the previous generation OnePlus phones is perhaps how cool the OnePlus 7 Pro really is. Not relatively, but literally too. This new processor as well as the liquid cooling system combine to keep the temperatures well in check, when you may be stressing out the phone while multitasking or gaming. OnePlus phones have always had those little eccentricities, which we never really did mind though. The sheer value for money that they offered was far surpassing anything else that was probably negative with the phone. However, things have changed with the OnePlus 7 Pro. This is now a flagship. Flagship pricing, and you expect flagship grade features. This, however, does not have wireless charging, for instance. It doesn't have an IP rating for water resistance. The camera is less than perfect, at least at the moment, till more software updates probably come around and solve that issue. So these little things you would expect from a flagship phone are missing in this one. It's your choice whether you really want a first generation flagship essentially, which OnePlus is making here, or something more established from the likes of the Samsung Galaxy S10 series perhaps.